After telling fans to let it go in regards to the Elite's beef with CM Punk, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks trolled the Chicago crowd last night on Dynamite using a variety of Punk signature spots. Speaking of Dynamite, William Regal and Jon Moxley came face to face for the first time since Regal betrayed Moxley at Saturday's Full Gear event, costing him the AEW World Championship. Speaking of championship, Thunder Rosa is officially no longer the women's champion after being stripped of the championship last night. Ricky Starks will challenge MJF for the AEW World Championship at Winter is Coming. The House of Black are back in AEW after making their return on Dynamite. We've got an update on Ring of Honor, plus Jake Hager challenges Orange Cassidy for the All-Atlantic Championship. Scorpio Sky is cleared for an in-ring return, and Kiera Hogan is fired from the Baddies. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, especially after last night's edition of AEW Dynamite Thanksgiving Eve. Let's get straight into the first story. And the Elite, they just can't help themselves, can they? They really can't. They knew they were going to get a very divisive welcome in Chicago after making their return to the city for the first time since the brawl-out situation with CM Punk, but gosh, they just can't help themselves. In case you haven't heard, back in September, some of AEW top stars were in hot water, shall we say, after the all-out pay-per-view. CM Punk spoke at a post-show media scrum. Before any questions could be asked by reporters, Punk exploded. Metaphorically, not literally. He threw verbal shots at a number of individuals: Colt Cabana, Hangman Adam Page, and of course, the inaugural AEW World Trios Champions, the Elite, that being Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. A physical confrontation occurred backstage involving Punk, Omega, and the Bucks, and others followed the media scrum tirade. The AEW World Championship held by Punk and the Elite's Trios titles were declared vacant, while all parties involved were pulled from AEW programming and suspended. Of course, the Elite returned to AEW programming at Saturday's Full Gear pay-per-view, and their next stop was at Wednesday's night's Dynamite in Chicago, Illinois, that being Punk's hometown. As the Elite made their entrance to take on Death Triangle, Pac, Rey Fenix, and Penta El Zero Miedo, the crowd let them know just how they felt. In a stark contrast to the FCM Punk chant at Full Gear, the crowd on Wednesday chanted F the Elite, but the Elite, they ate it up. In fact, they then began to mock Punk and the Chicago crowd. Omega bit Pac's arm, an apparent reference to what Ace Steel allegedly did to Omega during the backstage brawl at All Out. But it didn't end there. The Bucks' Matt Jackson also pretended to botch a buckshot lariat, mocking Punk's own botch of Hangman Page's finisher at Double or Nothing earlier this year. Then, to put the final nail in the coffin, Omega hit Pac with Punk's finisher, the GTS. The move nearly got the victory for Omega's team, but despite their efforts, the Elite lost their match against Death Triangle Wednesday night. That puts Death Triangle 2-0 up against the Elite in their best of 7 series for the AEW World Trios Championships. Now, as I mentioned, this shade wasn't just actually those spots too. Omega at one point did the go to sleep signal that CM Punk does before he hits his finisher. And if you're looking for a reaction from CM Punk to this, you may have one as well. Speaking on today's Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer said, quote, "I know there's people close to CM Punk that were, they were not happy with that 6-man tag team match. As of last word, Punk was still officially under contract with AEW after previous reports of talks for a buyout of his deal, which had delayed due to negotiations over a non-compete clause. As I mentioned, Death Triangle won the match, therefore they're up 2-0. And it must be said, there were large CM Punk chants throughout the evening, certainly. The pyro for Dynamite had not even finished last night before we were greeted by loud CM Punk chants, which shouldn't come as much of a surprise considering it was in Chicago." Look, I'm starting to get suspicious at this point. I'll be honest with you. I'm starting to get very, very suspicious. And maybe it's because I'm a jaded pro wrestling fan that's been watching WWE and AEW and Impact Wrestling and New Japan Pro Wrestling and WCW and ECW and professional wrestling in general for over 20 years at this point. But these references are just way too on the nose. If there was a legitimate legal issue here that they couldn't talk about things, they're referencing them so much. And I understand maybe it might have been a point of, well, you know, it's in Chicago, the crowd are going to be chanting for CM Punk, just go with it. But they didn't need to do that many references. And this is my point. Is this a work now? I think legitimately it started off as a shoot. What happened in Chicago at All Out, that was a shoot. What CM Punk did at the press conference, that was a shoot. But at the same time, now you had what they did on Being the Elite on Monday, where they stopped the music that they were playing to show the crowd chanting FCM Punk. Clearly, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to get their message across. Now, you can't then have Kenny Omega come out and do an interview like he did with Sports Illustrated and say, look, it's time to move on. It's time to move on. Let it go. It's not about the Elite versus CM Punk. We've got to move on. It's about pro wrestling. We've got to come together as a dressing room. We've got to unite. We can't talk about it. There are aspects of things we can't talk about. We can't talk about this situation, so you've got to move on. You'll never know what really happened. And then, less than 24 hours later, you come out on national television, and all you do is reference the guy. All you do is you do the GTS. You do the go to sleep. Matt Jackson botches the buckshot lariat on purpose. You then do the biting thing. It's too on the nose at this point. When things are a shoot, when things legitimately, it's like we can't talk about it. If there are active legal situations or the threat of a possible legal situation, you wouldn't do what they did last night. And I think it's raising a lot of eyebrows now, because last night again was too blatant. And you could just say, wow, it's just the Elite being a troll. That's all they're doing. They're just being a troll. They were in Chicago. They knew they were going to get booed, so they thought, you know what, let's just lean into it and we'll do all this kind of stuff. But is this what we're going to see now for the next 10 weeks? I thought the match was fantastic. I really enjoyed the match, but you can't tell people to move on if you yourself clearly are not willing to move on. It would appear the Elite firmly have not moved on at all. At all. They have not moved on. And I said this yesterday when I was talking about the Being the Elite footage. I said, how can you tell people to move on when clearly you yourself have not? And then watched the match last night. And the match didn't need it. This is what was wild as well. The atmosphere was fine as is. When the Elite made their entrance, it was electric. Absolutely electric. They got booed out the building. Wayward Son was still playing, and they were gesticulating to the crowd, and it worked. And it worked. And I thought, I'll tell you what, that's awesome. That atmosphere is electric, fantastic. I like that. But then when it got us too on the nose, I just thought, come on. And that's when I started questioning stuff of, okay, maybe things have been smoothed over. Maybe CM Punk is going to come back. Because it's not just this that's starting to reference Punk. MJF has been going out of his way in press conferences, in promos, and more and more and more to do CM Punk lines, to reference CM Punk promos. Of course, he interrupted Punk at the end of All Out. Maybe, again, things have been smoothed over to the point of when Punk's recovered from his injury, he will come back. I don't know at this point. I really don't. They're still selling Punk merchandise as well in all of the arenas and on shopaew.com. So, what do you think? Let me know your thoughts. Comment section below. Is this a shoot that's now turned into a work? Are the Elite and Kenny Omega in particular, are they all laying down the groundwork and the foundations for a feud once CM Punk does return to television? I mean, that's the ideal scenario for AEW and Tony Khan, is that he doesn't lose anyone. He continues to make money. And make no mistake, if CM Punk comes back to AEW and he feuds with the Elite, he has a singles feud with Kenny Omega, he has a trios feud with FTR as his partners against the Elite, that is major money. It's turning a real-life controversy into a storyline that could really set the product on fire once again, a product that's very cold. So your guess at this point is as good as mine. Part of me thinks, no, this is still a shoot. CM Punk is still leaving the company. He's still suspended. He's still on his way out. That's still happening. I think, the Elite were just trolling. They just thought, we're in Chicago and we're going to be smarter than everyone else and we're going to be trolling. But at the same time, after everything that's happened, you would think they would have to clear it with Tony Khan. And why would Tony Khan approve something if he was a bit nervous about it? And Tony Khan's been quite complimentary about CM Punk recently too. So you can't comment on certain things, but at the same time, he's also said CM Punk did nothing but great things for AEW. So your guess at this point is as good as mine, and I'd love to hear your guesses. Comment section below, let me know. Now, Dynamite kicked off last night with, honestly, I thought it was a fantastic segment. I really, really loved this segment. It was brilliant. William Regal was greeted with a thunderous "F-U Regal" chant from Chicago last night, where the gentleman villain was to address his betrayal of Jon Moxley at Full Gear. Instead, Regal mocked fans who attended Dynamite at the Wintrust Arena, referring to them as uncouth and undeserving of being in the presence of new AEW World Champion MJF. He said, "Would you like to hear from your new World Champion, Mr. Friedman? You will hear from him, but it'll be next week." Mr. Friedman doesn't have time to come to places such as Chicago. Mr. Friedman at the moment is on the set of a major motion picture. I'm sure you're all wondering what is the union between myself and Mr. Friedman. What I can tell you is this. A number of weeks ago, I sent an email to Mr. Friedman that you are all not privy to, nor will you be until next week, when Mr. Friedman will be here to explain everything. At this point, Moxley came down to the ring to confront Regal, charging toward his former Blackpool Combat Club mentor until Bryan Danielson got in the way and tried to calm him down. Quote, "I don't know why he did what he did on Saturday, okay?" Danielson told Moxley. "He did a bad thing, but you've done bad things too, and so have I. We've all done bad things. And please, I'm asking you, he's got a bad neck and 2 bleeds on the brain. Please don't hurt him." Moxley began to pace around the ring and momentarily jawed at Danielson, who proceeded to slap his teammate. I'm sorry, Danielson told him after slapping him. "Listen, you know those struggles you dealt with. My dad struggled with those same things. This is more than wrestling." Danielson then credited Regal for helping him understand his dad's struggles as he continued to plead Regal's forgiveness to Moxley. "Save him for me, if for no other reason," Danielson asked Moxley while getting down on one knee. "I love this man." The segment ended with Moxley delivering his parting words to Regal. "Lordship, I only want one thing from you," Moxley said. "I want you to run. Run as far as you can and never come back. Right now. Walk and keep on walking." As Regal slowly walked to the back, the fans broke out a "na na na, hey hey, goodbye" chant. It remains to be seen if Regal will show up alongside MJF on next week's Dynamite in Indianapolis, where MJF will speak for the first time since capturing the AEW World Championship. And it must be said, as I stated previously, this was the segment of the show. I really did enjoy, obviously, the Elite's match against Death Triangle. The chemistry there is unmatched. But this was pro wrestling. This was a pro wrestling promo. It was different from the norm in AEW. That's why I also think it worked so well. You had 3 people in the ring who are top-notch on the microphone. You didn't have the traditional interview. And that's not to say that's not good, but it's also you don't always need it. William Regal, they just started the show off in the ring. He had unbelievable heat and he just soaked it in. And it goes to show you can play things slow. MJF wasn't going to be on this week's show because he has other commitments. He's filming Iron Claw at the moment. But at the same time, in reality, he didn't need to be on this show, actually. And it's not MJF taking a background seat. It's actually making his appearances feel more special. And also, at the same time, the story coming out of Full Gear is why. Why did Regal turn on Moxley? And we didn't get the answer last night. But we shouldn't get the answer straight away. We don't need an explanation straight away. This is how you produce good television without giving the game away. Because the story here is Moxley, within all right, should come out and beat the hell out of William Regal. And it took Bryan Danielson to get in front of him and say, "Don't do it for me. Don't do it." Because we all know Regal's condition. We all know Regal's physical limitations. And frankly, Moxley there is having to deal with, I want to beat the hell out of this guy, but if I do, I might kill him. What do I do? And again, the tension was palpable. The promos were brilliant. It's fantastic. And this now is a story that's befitting of a world championship picture. We went into Full Gear and it was a bit like, well, Moxley's facing MJF. We know MJF's going to win. I'm not, the firm are involved. Who cares about them? That's dull. That's boring. This is a story. This is something you can get your teeth into. And this is something that I completely lost. It's all about suspension of disbelief. That was fully up in the air. I was invigorated. I was hooked on this segment, and I thought it was fantastic. So I'm excited to see where this one goes next week. We have an official AEW Women's World Champion that isn't Thunder Rosa. The interim tag is no more. Injured AEW Women's World Champion Thunder Rosa officially forfeited her title Wednesday after an announcement on the live episode of Dynamite confirmed that Jamie Hayter will no longer be recognized as an interim champion. As a result, Toni Storm, the previous holder of the interim title, will also be recognized as a former AEW Women's World Champion, according to AEW announcers. Renee Paquette made the announcement on stage saying, quote, due to the extent of the injuries to AEW Women's Champion Thunder Rosa and the uncertainty of when she could return to action, AEW and Thunder Rosa have reached a mutual agreement. AEW management has been forced to ask Thunder Rosa to relinquish the championship. Thunder Rosa was a fighting champion for AEW. She was willing to step aside for the benefit of AEW, but more specifically for all the women of AEW. Paquette would then introduce the new AEW Women's World Champion Hayter for an interview segment. However, it was Dr. Britt Baker who spoke on behalf of Hayter, putting over her friend as the undisputed AEW Women's World Champion, while adding that the term interim was never in their vocabulary. Baker and Hayter would then go on to defeat the teams of Willow Nightingale and Sky Blue and Anna Jay and Tay Mello in a three-way match. Meanwhile, Rosa took to Twitter to comment on her run as AEW Women's World Champion, saying, quote, thank you Thunder Army for all of the support and AEW for being there for me. Dreamlike moments happened in this run, and this is not how I wanted to lose the championship, but you deserve a present champion. On to the next chapter. Now, the decision to strip Rosa of the AEW Women's World Championship was previously hinted at by AEW President Tony Khan, who said on a media call last week that he was weighing up the pros and cons of such a move. With Storm and Hayter's interim reigns now properly recognised, the record book shows that Hayter officially became the 7th AEW Women's World Champion when she beat Storm for the title at Full Gear last Saturday. Rio, of course, is the inaugural champion. She won it back in October of 2019. Right decision, clearly. Absolutely right decision. No doubt about that. The interim stuff only works, in my opinion, if you've got a champion that's out for a month or 2 months or something like that. It's been way longer at this period of time, and it doesn't appear that she's going to be coming back until January, February, or we don't even really know that situation at the moment. The one thing I would say when it comes to now Toni Storm's reign is officially recognized, well, it's too little too late, because the entirety of her run, she was an interim champion. So she never got the full credence and kudos of being an official undisputed women's world champion. So I really do sympathize and empathize with her, and I hope that she has another reign with a title. Not anytime soon, because Jamie Hayter deserves it. She's incredibly over at this point. But at the same time, I do really sympathize, because that's not fair. You know what? You finish second. It's like being in the Olympics. You get the gold medal, but then you find out the silver medal. Sorry, you finish second, but then you find out that the person with the gold medal has been disqualified. So you go, we're going to give you your gold medal in the post. Well, okay, I've got it. Thanks for the recognition, but at the same time, I was still standing on the podium with the silver medal. So again, right decision, but also my point is that it's a bit too little too late when it comes to Toni Storm. But now it's time for everyone to move on, and I hope that they just kind of realize, AEW, when I say they, Tony Khan, I hope he realizes that the interim stuff just doesn't work. For CM Punk, logically that did work in the summer. Of course, it didn't work out with what happened at All Out, but logically that did make sense. He was gone for 6 weeks, 2 months. Like, it wasn't a big deal. When someone's out of action for 4 months, 5 months, possibly even longer, you can't do an interim champion in that basis. Speaking of the World Championship, Ricky Starks will be MJF's first challenger for the title after he won the AEW World Championship Eliminator Tournament, defeating Ethan Page in the final of the tournament last night on Dynamite. Of course, he'll face MJF at the Winter is Coming edition of Dynamite. And this is really exciting. You know, fans on social media are particularly excited about the potential promo battles between MJF and Starks, seeing as both men are renowned for their skills on the microphone. The first exchange could take place next week. This is the difficult thing, I suppose, is when are they going to start building to this? Because this is going to be a feud that they've got to build to relatively quickly, because of course the Winter is Coming edition of Dynamite's in a couple of weeks' time. But this background story of Moxley, Danielson and Regal is still going to be going on. So it's going to be interesting how much build this gets, but I'm really glad for Ricky Starks. He's someone that he did this amazing babyface promo, and then Will Hobbs turned on him, and everyone was thinking, right, this is going to lead to a great feud, and they just didn't do anything with it. They just did nothing with it. And Ricky Starks does have that charisma as a babyface, and I think that, in fairness, now when you look at the champions and you look at the way particularly I think Dynamite was booked last night, they're starting to veer back to focusing on those AEW homegrown talents, those AEW originals once again, which is really what separates them from WWE. They went too far on one side with the ex-WWE guys, and there's still a lot of them on the show, make no doubt about that. And also, it's inevitable that that's going to be the case, because most people in pro wrestling nowadays have worked for WWE, you know, particularly the big stars. So it's inevitable, but at the same time, MJF, versus Starks, AEW guys. Jamie Hayter is an AEW female, you know. The top 2 champions, male and female, are both in their mid-20s and AEW homegrown talents. That's significant. And I think that's what they need to get back to in AEW. The House of Black are back. Malachi Black and his faction returned last night on AEW Dynamite, shortly after Orange Cassidy had his match against Jake Hager. We'll talk about that shortly. The lights went out when QT Marshall and the Factory appeared. They seemingly have unfinished business with the babyface trio. The lights went out, following which Julia Hart walked out to the ramp and summoned the House of Black with the Rise Up hand gesture. The trio of Black, Buddy Murphy, and Brody King then proceeded to destroy the Best Friends and the Factory as they cheered on from ringside. The House of Black turned their attention to the Factory, wiping out Marshall and co. with a series of quick strikes before the action spilled out to ringside. Eventually, several wrestlers and AEW staffers tried to stop the House of Black, only to feel the wrath of the returning stable themselves. The beatdown ended with Brody King hitting Dante's Inferno on a member of AEW's backstage crew, following which Black grabbed the microphone to address the live audience, saying, quote, "Members of the House of Black, please rise," before the lights went out again and AEW cut to commercial. This was really well done. Really, really well done and really exciting. We've seen obviously these vignettes for a long time, or the last few weeks certainly, teasing the return of the House of Black. Obviously Black himself has been on hiatus. Buddy Matthews has been on hiatus with speculation surrounding their future. Black did ask for his release. It was denied. He also had some issues going on in his personal life, also a back injury. But the faction is back, and if they're booked like this, you heard the reaction last night, and they are different, and it can be fun. Brody King's a monster. This can work. And with the Elite back doing their best of 7 series with Death Triangle, you would think, even though they're 2-0 down, they're probably going to win that. And then maybe they feud with the House of Black, and that's when maybe then CM Punk comes back with FTR. And that's when they feud over the Trios Championships. Now that sounds like a very interesting prospect, does it not? Let's talk about Ring of Honor. Of course, Ring of Honor still has a large presence on AEW programming at the moment. And one of the biggest criticisms of AEW throughout its 3-year history is the amount of time that Ring of Honor titles and talent are featured on Dynamite and Rampage since Tony Khan purchased the company back in March. While Khan has revealed that he is in talks to secure a television deal for ROH, nothing has been made concrete. However, Khan has updated fans about what they can expect from ROH in the future. Quote, "I'm open to different things, but I've been very open. I'm very interested in weekly Ring of Honor television in addition to what we're doing now with Warner Bros. Discovery," Khan said on the AEW Full Gear media call prior to Saturday. "It's been a very lucrative partnership we're pursuing because so far this has been, on a per-event basis, the greatest year in Ring of Honor pay-per-view history. I think there is a business case for it in a way that does not cannibalize AEW pay-per-views or live events." He also provided some insight as to why he features ROH titles and talent on AEW programming, adding that since ROH is currently having no television deal and AEW only has 3 hours of television per week, he uses the time to help build up storylines heading into ROH pay-per-views that would otherwise struggle to gain momentum. Quote, I do think next year I would potentially reevaluate that because, yeah, I want to keep the focus on AEW championships. That's what the idea is. And I do somewhat sympathize. I do think that criticism is a little bit unfair because he's got this company that doesn't have weekly TV at the moment, but he's still pursuing doing pay-per-views. So he has to kind of keep the momentum going somehow. The problem is that every match on Dynamite or Rampage then feels like a title match. That's the problem. As I've said, it doesn't need to be title matches every week. You can feature ROH talent, but you don't need to have title matches. Like, for instance, last night on Dynamite, we've got a Ring of Honor World Championship main event. Why? Just because we do. And that's not necessary. But I do think next year we are going to get that ROH TV deal. Whether that's with Warner Bros. Or Discovery, that remains to be seen. Speaking of Dynamite last night, Orange Cassidy defeated Jake Hager to retain the AEW All-Atlantic Championship. A match that was actually quite a lot of fun. The main focus was on Jake Hager's hat. It is what it is, but I thought the match was fun and the crowd was certainly into it. As to what opponents will face Orange Cassidy next will remain to be seen. Scorpio Sky is on his way back to in-ring action. AEW star Scorpio Sky has been cleared to return to in-ring competition after several months of injury, according to a new report. He's been absent from AEW programming for nearly 5 months, ever since losing the AEW TNT Championship to Wardlow in their street fight on the July 6th edition of Dynamite. Leading up to the match with Wardlow, Sky had been dealing with a leg injury, but according to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, Scorpio Sky has been cleared to wrestle for quite some time now and is is fully eligible for an in-ring return. However, no creative plans have been made for him just yet. This isn't really anything new. We've seen this before, that when talent gets injured, because the wheel moves so quickly in AEW and because they've got so many people on the talent roster, it's sometimes difficult to cycle them back into storylines. So I guess for Sky, it's just a case of trying to wait for the right moment to bring him back in. Finally, Kiera Hogan, you're fired. That's according to Jade Cargill anyway. Appearing in a backstage segment to talk about their recent backstage altercation with Bow Wow, Jade Cargill and the Baddies were back at full force. Red Velvet made her return, and it seemed perhaps there was one less spot in the Baddies squad. Mark Sterling appeared not only to weigh in on Jade's altercation with Bow Wow by issuing a statement of no comment, he also asked one baddie to stay behind as the segment ended. Telling Kiera Hogan to sign some documents in front of the cameras, he informed her that her services were no longer necessary and she was terminated from the Baddies. Now, I don't know what this means about her AEW future, if she's gone or if she's just moving into singles competition. I don't know, but that will have to remain to be seen. Once we get an update, we'll talk about it here on the channel. But there you go, guys. That's the latest AEW news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner. Let me know your thoughts on today's AEW news stories in the comment section below, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.